This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, it's time we'll call our meeting to order. It is 9:31. It looks like we have 6 present, which constitutes a quorum. At this time, I'll give you any opportunity for public comment if anyone has that at this time.
Nobody in person. Is there anybody online that wants to make public comment?
There is no one online that wants to make public comment.
No public comment.
And the next item is an action item regarding approval of meeting minutes from the January 16, 2025 meeting, pages 6 through 10. I'll give you all a minute to review those if needed.
And just as you're reviewing, as a reminder, this was on the agenda item for the last meeting, but there was no quorum, so an official meeting wasn't held. So that's why the January minutes are in front of you for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve.
First and second, all in favor? Aye. Aye.
Who was the second? Was it Dean?
Dean. Okay, motion carries. All right, next item is discussion and possible action regarding the nomination and appointment of a vice chair on page 12.
I believe at the January meeting, Kayla Traub with the city of Hamilton EDC was nominated and appointed as vice chair. Since that time, she's vacated that position, which left a vacancy for the board vice chair position. This would, action on this would fill the vice chair vacancy through September 2025. And then we're trying to, as we talk through later in some of the bylaws things, identify when elections need to be, identify exactly when those need to happen. So this would take through the September meeting and with a new chair and vice chair. Us taking action on that at the next meeting. So however that lines out, this would fill that void until at least September, possibly after. I don't have the dates in my head for the next meeting, unfortunately.
So if we are looking for potential candidates, it would be probably preferably somebody in this room. If we look at the membership list presented on page 7, where those are options.
I would go to the back page maybe.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's going to be page 40.
And even since this packet was sent out and printed and compiled, there have been some changes to that board contact list for consideration. Bobby Whitson, his position, he resigned from his position in Bell County, appointed Amanda Organ with the Selective Chamber. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dexter Morris has resigned from the DDCT. Trying to think, and Linda Angel is the new workforce representative. Those are the changes that didn't make it into the packet.
So basically, we just need someone from now till September.
Now till September, possibly a little longer, depending on when the next scheduled date is. Is that October? So until October 3rd, when we would take action.
I don't believe I'm eligible because I served in a position according to the bylaws. I served too long.
What position did you serve in?
All of them.
All of them. Okay. Well, I'm the newbie, one of the newbies, so just trying to learn. So.
So really, there's not much duty required of this position. It's just a formality until elections. So
I think a vice chair, steps in when the chair can't be present, things like that. Also, I think the vice chair and the chair can do other things that other directors can't do, like enter into agreements and things.
If they're approved by the board.
If they're approved by the board, so, yeah.
So, having been here 15, maybe not quite 15, it seems like something that even if you're new, your lines can help you through it. I'm looking at Cynthia going, and Cynthia's also in Belton, so even though she's not in the room, be a potential good choice, but I bet she's served on every position.
Yeah, I think she's in the same boat as.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're looking for volunteers, but I would be willing to do it. And acknowledging that I have no idea what I just volunteered to do.
I nominate Linda Angel for the vice chair of the DDCT.
And I am delighted to second that motion.
Your second motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good, good. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. We appreciate you.
You're safe.
The good news is the meetings are quarterly.
And I have you on speed dial.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any? It's okay. All right, the next item is a discussion item regarding opportunity zones on page 14. This is something that I asked to be on the agenda just because I think there's a map of opportunity zones that I think a lot of people may or may not know about them, and the different opportunities that the opportunity zones do bring in our different counties. And so being that we serve in the capacity that we serve in, I thought it would be beneficial to have someone come who's maybe an expert on that. And so I did call Sarah Leone and Associates, Sarah Leone and College Associates. And so Eddie, come on up, and we would love to hear and get up what you have about opportunity zones.
Here you go.
First of all, thank you all so much for having me. I spoke to Sarah Leon, who is the founder of our firm. I joined the firm recently, but I have extensive experience in negotiating and just helping public entities, primarily school districts, think about economic incentives and the role they play within the community, how to best utilize them, and of course, drawing up agreements and whatnot. So I know we're going to focus a little bit on opportunity zones and what that means, but I'm going to kind of walk through a couple things. That's the firm. So we're a full service law firm for governmental entities, primarily school districts, to everything from the day-to-day HR matters, which I try not to touch. I'm not trusted with HR matters, but I'm primarily a business attorney. So I will help with construction contracts and a whole number of things. We've got folks who work in public finance and essentially anything that a governmental entity needs. That's me, former 5th grade teacher, so I'm comfortable up here chatting with y'all. And if you don't throw anything at me, that'll be a step up from my teaching days, so thank you for that. But again, I've worked on economic development matters for essentially my entire career. Worked on over 100 economic development agreements, value limitation agreements under Chapter 313, former Chapter 313, which has now been replaced by a program called the JETI program, the Jobs, Energy, Technology, and Innovations program, which I'll touch on a little bit here. There's an overlap with opportunity zones that I think creates a really interesting opportunity for communities. So I wanted to start off, just an overview of what we're going to go over today. Economic development in Texas generally, opportunity zones specifically, and then the interplay between opportunity zones and the new JETI program. And if at any time you have questions, by all means, feel free to stop me, interrupt, raise your hand, whatever works for you. So economic development in Texas, this slide will not be news to anybody in this room, I'm sure, but when companies are looking to locate somewhere in Texas or the United States or the world, there's a checklist of things that they're looking for. And so this slide kind of goes over that. So workforce availability and skills, infrastructure, access, incentives and tax environment, which is the topic for today, quality of life, speed and predictability of approvals, et cetera. And a special note here for consideration is that companies really value a site that they can show up and start building, right away or as soon as possible. Anytime that companies are required to kind of delay the start of their business it hurts their bottom lines. They want to be able to get started right away. The tools for local governments and economic incentives. We've got tax abatements permitted under Chapter 312 of the tax code. Chapter 380, 381 agreements, which essentially allow cities and counties to enter into economic development agreements, tax incremental reinvestment zone or deters, public PIDs, not my area of expertise, but it's a public investment. It's a zone that's designated for particular infrastructure investment, and the folks in that area get taxed at a little bit of a higher rate, and the idea is that you use that incremental increase to fund infrastructure in the area. And of course, I mentioned JETI, the Jobs, Energy, Technology, and Innovation Act. And then at the regional and federal level, which is where opportunity zones fall in, there's economic development corporations, which y'all are probably familiar with, planning and zoning, so making sure that you're on top of your planning and zoning to the extent that applies. And there, I highlighted streamlined permitting is a huge deal for companies. Public infrastructure investment, and then opportunity zones. We'll get specific here with opportunity zones, just high-level overview. What are they? And is this the first time that y'all as a group have discussed opportunity zones?
I think we've talked about it as a group before. There's been a presentation by a staff member, but some of the board member and makeup has changed since that.
Okay, great. Well, again, feel free to stop me if there are any questions or you want to dig deeper onto any of these issues. So, an overview of the key concepts here. The program, the Opportunity Zone program, was created in 2017 through federal legislation. It's designed to spur investment in low-income communities, economically distressed communities, as the term is used in the statute. And it benefits investors in a couple of ways, primarily deferring capital gains taxes, and then the potential of the complete removal of capital gains taxes if the investment sits for 10 years or longer. It's designated by census tract and it's certified by the U.S. Treasury. So when the Congress approved this bill, opportunity zones were created. The task then fell to the governor to designate up to 25% of qualified areas in every state as opportunity zones. That was then submitted to the Treasury, which certified that all of the requirements were met, and then designated opportunity zones emerged throughout the country. And so this is a map, and this is a fairly easy to find list of opportunity zones in the community. This is a map of Texas here, so you can kind of see where the big areas of blue are, smaller areas.
So with opportunity zones being now permanent, because they were set to expire in 26, right?
Yes.
So they're now permanent. Is part of that going to be expansion of opportunity zones, or will they remain the same?
So that's a good question, and I'll say it was just extended. So
right.
the big headline is, like you said, now they're now permanent, set to expire in 2026. Now permanent, so that's good news. A lot of what the current opportunity zone program entails was done through regulation. So the statute's kind of broad. It fell to the Treasury and other agencies to define what it's going to look like. All of that is to be determined. And those processes will take probably at least another 6 months, probably a year or two to fully define what that's going to look like. So it's hard to say right now. As of now, nothing has changed at the regulation level. It's what will carry on. But now that there is an extension, the regulations are likely to change. So, and because it was a week or two that has been extended now, along with myriad other changes to statute, it's to be determined is the short answer. And it's defined by census tract, and so Yeah, some census tracts it's done by population, so some are rather large because they have smaller populations, some are very dense because they're very densely populated. So the local government role in opportunity zones, I mentioned it's a federal program implemented by the state, at least in the designation portion. And so the question is, like, what role can a local government have? Well, first is knowing where your opportunity zones are, and then the long and short of it is figuring out how to best market that to potential investors. And there are statewide, nationwide funds that specifically accumulate capital gains dollars on behalf of investors specifically for this purpose. So number one is understanding what your community is most suited to provide. Now, for the most part, opportunity zones are used in the real estate context for affordable housing, creating substantial improvements to capital projects. So it's one of the requirements of an opportunity zone investment is that it improves, it either builds from the ground up or improves usually some sort of multifamily housing is the big investment there. But coordinating with investors and developers, so figuring out what funds there are, what funds have shown interest in your area in Central Texas, and then figuring out how to market to those folks. So primarily, from my experience, it's probably going to be multifamily housing developments, but there are other opportunities there as well. Removing local barriers, so streamlining any sort of permitting situation so that these folks know that they can get in, hit the ground running, and then, as I noted, promoting and marketing your zone. So making your zone visible to national funds. And this is just one example of a resource. It looks like I kind of fell asleep on the keyboard and put up a bunch of letters there, but it's Novogradic. It's a large tax consulting company, and they accumulate information for funds that invest in areas and sort of their area of interest, where they have current projects, that sort of thing. But with a little bit of research, you can kind of figure out who's invested nearby, who might be interested. And these are just sort of the big ones, but there are opportunities for other investors to pull their funds, or for a single large investor to pull a certain amount of their funds to invest. And so figuring out who's out there is the big one. So for the most part, opportunity zones are, it's a tool for financing. So it to the extent that it will generate development in the area, it's going to be through like an incremental, making it slightly more appealing to a developer, for example, slightly better rate, or if they're investing their own funds, the potential to reinvest and kind of shield those taxes from capital gains. So it's incremental. I believe the latest figure is there's been over $100 billion invested through this throughout the country. Obviously, that will grow now that it's permanent. It gives investors a little more, a better understanding of the track record of how it's been implemented, but also it's helpful to them to know that it's going to be around, 10 years. Hopefully, it won't be repealed anytime soon. So it gives them a little more assurance that this is a financing vehicle that's going to make sense for them long term. But so incremental financing, that's going to be the big appeal for most investments. However, there is an overlap with the Jobs, Energy, Technology, and Innovation Program, JETI. Have you all heard about the JETI program at all?
Briefly before, but I still need to learn more about it.
Yeah, it's new. It's Chapter 313. Those agreements, have you all heard of those? The idea is economic development. So you attract large infrastructure projects, manufacturing projects, et cetera, to an area by allowing them to enter an agreement with the school district to lower their maintenance and operation taxes. And the reason that program was around for 20 years, and it was hugely successful, in terms of number of applicants, in terms of number of projects that were brought to Texas, it was hugely successful. But it has sunset. So that program was sunset at the end of 2022. We had a little bit of a gap in 2023 where we didn't know if there would be a successor statute, what it would look like. It's on 2023. the legislature brought back a version of it, which is the Jobs, Energy, Technology, and Innovation Act. And the reason that, to kind of cut to the chase here, the JETI program overlaps with opportunity zones in a really important way, in that if a company is eligible for a JETI program in a non-opportunity zone, and I'll go through what those requirements are here in a bit, but these are large projects. I think the smallest one I've seen is $400 million. The largest I've seen is $6 billion. These are very, very large projects. So if a company qualifies for that, for a 10-year period, their maintenance and operation taxes are capped at 50% of what they normally are. That's for a project outside of an opportunity zone. On a $6 billion project, those are significant tax benefits. If a project is located wholly within an opportunity zone, that cap goes from 50% of taxes to 75% of taxes. So they get an additional 25% benefit on top of that. So this program is still very new. It's still very new, and it's focused on energy, advanced manufacturing, and technology. So far, the majority of projects have been large manufacturing projects for the most part. However, in this area, and I mentioned my experiences with Chapter 313 agreements, I worked on several of them in this area. You may or may not know, but this area, generally in Central Texas, along with others in the state, are along key infrastructure for energy transfer. And so you may have seen in the last 10 years or so, solar pop up, and pros, cons, some folks are for it, some folks are against it in terms of economic development. For the most part, those types of projects are no longer permitted under JETI like they were under Chapter 313. But there is an exception, and the exception has to do with a rapid deployment of energy. And so we are seeing some of these projects pop up around the state. And essentially what it is, the state wants to be able to bolster its energy infrastructure, particularly at peak periods when solar and wind may not be available. And so these rapid deployment infrastructure sites are likely going to be looking for the same types of infrastructure that was appealing to solar and wind. But the difference is many of these are coal-fired, and the idea is when the demand is there, they fire up, they help support the grid, and then when the demand is not there, they kind of go offline. So those do qualify for under the JETI program, and to the extent that they overlap with an opportunity zone, that is kind of prime real estate for folks that are interested in that.
So they're getting an extra 25% off their taxes on the maintenance and operations side.
An additional 25%, yes, sir. And the other part of the JETI program, and the reason that it's, you might say, for a school district, why the heck would I give up 75% of this huge taxpayer's property bill, right? Well, the trade-off is that the projects are taxed at 100% for INS purposes. So for a school district in a community that's maybe hasn't fully leveraged a bond in a while, if they're interested in issuing INS taxes to support a bond for their debt service payments, if you have a large property owner that comes in, school district that we're working with, and I'm just outside of Houston, it's a $6 billion investment solely within that school district, and so I think it's going to almost triple their tax value. So it can be very appealing on the INS side, even if you're technically giving up. There's some complicated math that boils down to the state taking just about everything all funds in additional M&O taxes. So it ends up being kind of a wash on the M&O side for schools.
Yeah,
huge benefit.
Because they become property wealthy, they become a recapture district, and they lose their title funding because now they're property wealthy.
Right.
But it really doesn't affect their M&O side hardly any, but it impacts the INS side pretty drastically.
Right.
Now, where are the differences in like city municipalities, like their tax rates and things, like if they fall somewhere near a city where they can annex it later on, Like, how does it impact their tax rate? Does it impact it the same way?
So this is where there's an interplay with other tax incentives as well. So the Jetty program only deals with school district taxes. So it doesn't inherently imply that any other governmental entity's tax base will be impacted at all. So in theory, large business moves in, they have this great deal. They're saving 50% on their taxes on their M&O side, or 75% if they're in an opportunity zone. In theory, the city or county that falls in, it's not impacted at all. So that the city or county would get full benefits. But what will tend to happen is, again, the company is coming in looking for the best bundle of benefits that they can negotiate. So they'll go to the school district because that will be their largest cost in terms of taxes. So they'll go to the school district, then they'll also go to the county and say, we're interested in this, we're not sure, are we eligible for a tax abatement? So then they'll do that. And then they'll look for federal tax credits. So they'll bundle this set of benefits, and there are consultants that work for companies that do all of that. And then they'll package it for a company, and the company says, yes, that looks great. So in theory, there's no interplay there, but what will often happen is a city or a county will offer a tax abatement. They'll create what's called a reinvestment zone, which is just a designation of an area that is qualified for an incentive. And then the school district will piggyback off of that reinvestment zone to say, yeah, we're in your reinvestment zone, we will also offer this Jetty program. So I mentioned, I've gone over a good amount of this, but I mentioned the benefit to 50% versus 75% for being in an opportunity zone. And so as I was thinking about this presentation and thinking about, how you might be able to conceptualize this, right? What does an opportunity zone mean? How does it interplay with Jetty? I think the key fundamentals are the same. The companies are going to look for a place where they're going to get a substantial benefit, and it makes sense for their company to locate. So in that sense, everything else still applies in terms of job-ready sites, easy permitting. But those factors become proportionately less important as the tax benefit increases. So the fact that there are so many opportunity zones in Central Texas will add to that appeal for companies.
So if it was near a city and they were able to annex and everybody was full aware of it, they would feel 100% of the benefit the city would, or they would still get the 25 and the 50
from the school district.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, but the opportunity zone gives them 75% off the taxes of the city taxes.
No, just the school.
Just the school district.
The Jetty is just attached to school districts.
Okay. Now, what if they don't enter into a jetty, but they're just in the opportunity zone? Then how does it? I mean, so the city, they're going to have a tax if they annex it in.
Mm-hmm.
Would they feel a full 100% of those taxes, or would they get 75% off? Or I'm sorry, not 75, but 50% off because it's in an opportunity zone. That's 50% off the taxes.
So the opportunity zone is that only applies to the capital gains taxes. So it's a vehicle for them to shield their capital gains taxes. But if they're building in a community, the community is still able to tax them at a regular rate unless they've entered into some other tax abatement.
So we get 100% taxes off of that entity.
Yes.
The opportunity zone is really just about bringing capital to the low-income communities. So it allows investors, as you say, to defer their capital gains. And if they hold an investment for 10 years, which because the opportunity zone was phasing out, that 10 years had kind of gone away, and some of the other benefits that were part of the program went away. So it's really about bringing that capital in and going out to investors have to either form an opportunity zone fund or be a part of a fund. And so going out and finding funds, they're all over the place now, and what, as you say, those funds want to invest in. I had one years ago because Cameron is 75% of our city is covered by an opportunity zone.
The whole city? Wow.
Yeah, 75%, which is great on an, can you attract investment, but it doesn't say good things about our citizens and where they are economically, because we're historically disadvantaged community. However, I've had an opportunity zone fund come to me and say, I want to build a HUD manufacturing subdivision. It actually wound up not going anywhere, but that was a fund. There are funds that do manufacturing, or like you say, low-income housing. It's just what do those investors want to put their money?
So this is sort of the why it matters, and I've alluded to this, but these are very, very large investments. They're required to be by statute, but what we've seen is that and so now the statute is now a little over 2 years old. There have only been 17 applications total in that time period. To give you an example, just in 2022, when the Chapter 313 program was going to sunset, there was something like 1,200, 1,500 applications in that 1 year. So this program is slowly ramping up. There are new factors. It's not an exact replica of 313, not even close. But investors and companies are starting to figure out how to leverage it. And so what we're seeing is these applications are starting to pick up, and you don't know when they're coming. So a lot of times you don't know when they're coming. The application I mentioned just outside of Texas, or just outside of Houston, it's $6 billion investment. There had been a lot of moving parts going on between the governor's office and the comptroller and all of these things, but it just kind of showed up one day. Hey, there's going to be this $6 billion investment. Timelines are really tight, which is not ideal when you're trying to negotiate an agreement, but you all are aware that this exists now, and so to the extent that you get a call, hey, what's a jetty? What do we do with this? We have to take action in 30 days. That's no time for a governmental entity. So you're already a step ahead of most governmental entities in Texas, which are not very familiar with the program at all. And again, major dollars. So this programs moving slowly, but the two that have been approved are in Galena Park ISD and Northwest ISD, and you can see the size of those investments. So $429 million. The limitation is 50% because it's not in an opportunity zone. And in Galena Park, the proposed investment is $1.7 billion.
Do you know, like, for example, what are those economic developments consisting of?
Yeah, so these are, and I put the link down there. So all of these documents are posted online if you want to kind of browse what sort of projects are being considered and approved. I highly encourage you to go to that. And it's operated through the comptroller's website. The governor is also involved. Oddly enough, I mean, it's for Chapter 313. You think that the agreement is between the company and the school district who are getting the benefit, but the governor's office is now also a party to jetty agreements, and so they have a say in, what's approved, what's not, the form of the agreement, et cetera. So jet fuel manufacturing is the project type there for Summit, the Summit Next Gen project, which is in Galena Park outside of Houston. Aircraft parts manufacturing. And you can see there, most of them are some sort of manufacturing. It's the easiest to qualify for, particularly because there are job requirements, which are much higher now, rightfully so, I think, than they were under Chapter 313. And that just is tied to to your population, the population of your county. So manufacturing, I've seen, plastics, advanced plastics. There's one that is pharmaceutical manufacturing. But yes, all, for the most part, are some sort of manufacturing. But there is, I don't think the application has been filed yet, but there is one kind of between Austin and Houston that is a rapid deployment of energy. And so I think once companies start to realize how they can leverage the JETI program and they understand the interplay with an opportunity zone, I think that that's kind of the next wave that I would anticipate. In addition to the manufacturing projects, is these rapid deployment sites, which I think Central Texas is kind of prime. Just if you think anywhere that you've seen or heard of wind or solar, all of the same benefits apply to these rapid deployment of energy resources.
I think one of the biggest electrical expansion fixing to occur in Texas, it's going to start Southeast Temple and potentially go all West Texas.
Yeah.
700 megahertz energy. One transmission line. I think that you're right about that, about Central Texas, have an opportunity for rapid deployment of energy.
Yeah.
Or having the ability to get the energy where it needs to go in Texas.
Right. Yes, sir.
This is a little bit off subject, but I would like your perspective. One of the functions that we do is for our planning, our 5-year planning is disaster preparedness. And, we're dealing with a lot of small communities, a few big cities. A lot of the small communities, are not upper scale, have their own planning and development and drainage issues within their city governments. And we've experienced a pretty severe disaster in Central Texas and the Hill Country due to these high-level rain issues and a lot of flooding. And I've noticed in the small community that I'm from that there's a propensity for someone who wants to develop to have an unlimited authority from the local government to elevate the property. So, and then they'll put concrete on it. So they've changed the elevation and affected the drainage and their neighbor's property, which maybe was higher before, now is lower. And so I was wondering at the state level or the federal level, are there any controls or any guidelines within the systems that come down for development to where that they will, do no local ecological or environmental harm with these projects?
So in terms of the state, for the most part, any kind of zoning or variance, that's going to be determined at the local level. Yeah, so for the most part, anytime that we're dealing with any kind of variance or approval, permitting or zoning, that's going to be at the local level.
That's what I've noticed.
Yeah. However, if we're looking for an interplay with economic development, local governments can create your own rules around what qualifies for a 312 agreement, for a tax abatement, for example, or a school district can determine, what qualifies for a JETI agreement. And so I saw this quite often with Chapter 313 agreements, solar again, but solar was perceived to create these sorts of environmental issues. And so you can require that they have specific bonding, for example, to hedge against those sorts of risks. You can have them agree explicitly that they will conduct, particular environmental study or runoff study, wastewater plans, that sort of thing. So you can require that through the vehicle of an economic incentive to say, yes, we'll consider your project, but you need to check all of these boxes.
I think we ought to develop some guidelines for smaller cities, so at least they would have this as a work product to review, because people just seem to want to accept at the local government level.
Right.
A lot of things that there's not enough planning in that regard for.
And it's a tough position to be in if you're a local government, economically distressed by definition. Company comes in and says, we're built here, but we want all these variances. It's a tough position to be in because you want the investment, but also you need to hedge against the contingencies there. So that wraps up the the conversation there, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Or also,
So
yeah.
during the construction process, once you get contracts signed, things are good, and you have a developer wanting to come into an opportunity zone. So we know about the 50% tax abatement, could potentially be 75% tax abatement through a JD program with the school district and that entity. During the construction process, are they paying taxes during the construction process? Are they not paying taxes during the construction process?
Yeah,
How does that work?
That's a great question. So, and that is a change from Chapter 313. So the company will not pay M&O taxes during what they've designated as their construction period, but they'll still be fully taxable for INS purposes. As soon as they start building and their tax assessment changes, they will pay INS taxes on that. So any kind of debt service payments that the school district is counting on, they're counting on property taxes to pay for, those are paid immediately. Yeah.
Okay. And that's with the JD program or not?
That's with the JETI program, yeah.
Okay.
So that's through the JETI program. There's latitude to negotiate in a tax abatement, for example, for a city or a county. But for reasons I could speak about for the next hour, school districts aren't permitted to strictly offer an abatement, a tax abatement, and so we end up calling them value limitation agreements, but highly regulated area. But yes, so Chapter 312, which is the tax abatements for cities and counties, would permit for that sort of negotiation.
Now, if you're not in the JD program at all, but they're in an opportunity zone, do they still get zero taxes during construction on the M&O side, but is it the same or no?
No, the opportunity zones don't have anything to do with the taxes that the project is paying. So if their appraisal changes, their valuation changes during construction, you're going to get that.
On the M&O side and the INS side?
Yeah, it doesn't have
okay.
anything to do with the taxes of projects.
So really, the JD program really does help them out.
Oh, yeah, it's
Huge,
hugely.
substantial.
Absolutely.
With school districts, okay.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and there are erosion requirements that they have to comply with to qualify. So it's not, these are for the most part going to be really large projects that qualify. They have a minimum job requirements, minimum investment requirements that is dependent on the size of the county. But for the most part, they're going to be on the low end, probably $80 to $100 million investments. On the large end, I mean, there's really no cap at the larger end.
Do those benefits expire at any time?
Under the JETI program, yes. So the idea is they have a 10-year period where they receive those benefits, and then after that, fully taxable at their. Now, what happens over any amount of time, but 10 years in particular, the project would be worth far less than it was when it was built. So, but the full value that is there and taxable will stay on the books for the remainder. And the companies are required to, it's called maintain a viable presence. They can't just disappear, January 1 after they lose their tax benefit.
So what if they sell? Could the new owner then apply for the same?
Yes. So that if they sell, then you would buy, these are transferable. So the company that comes in could assume all of the same obligations. As long as they're meeting the duties that their predecessor agreed to, they can continue just the same.
But they couldn't though renew for another 10 years under new ownership, or they could?
No, they couldn't, no. So the other element there is that these are new projects, and one of the tests that they have to satisfy is that they are considering other sites. And they have to show to the comptroller's office that they have other viable sites outside of the state of Texas. And so if they don't, like a lot of companies, I'm sure, Exxon and these, really large companies would love to say, hey, we'd like a jetty right next to where we already exist and we have no way of changing our infrastructure. But in theory, those types of projects aren't supposed to be, unless, they'll find a way. But those types of projects are for the most part, not supposed to be approved. There needs to be, location needs to be a determining factor.
Any questions?
Thank you for making the connection
Thank you very
between
much.
the opportunity zone and jetties.
Yeah,
Very
you're welcome. Yeah, the opportunity yeah, a lot of folks aren't aware of that. And I think as you all become aware, you can kind of mention to companies that maybe are interested and maybe approach you for these sorts of things and may not be aware. I know their tax consultants oftentimes aren't aware of that interplay. So hopefully it gives you all something to chat about with folks that are interested in investing here in the community.
Okay, do we have a question in the back?
Yes, so I'm just curious, if a company comes and demonstrates a great profit in 10 years, why would they leave and like just decide to build someplace else aside of the tax incentives? Because it seems like they're continuing to build a great profit.
Yeah, and that's the idea. That's the theory of why these are even appealing at all from the government level. And they are, yeah, so yes, that's a great question. The answer is, it depends on the company. So sometimes if it's a growing company, for example, they might be looking to move their headquarters somewhere else. They may have found that the site wasn't as, and this wouldn't apply if they're being largely successful, et cetera, but maybe they're diversifying. Or one thing that I saw with like Chapter 313 agreements, for example, you take a company like Tesla, right? They moved from California to Texas. As they started to get to essentially build their own batteries and started to source their own lithium, they opened up a new project under a Chapter 313 agreement that was near a port, for example, because they were importing a lot more. The business might just have evolved or changed. They take on new work streams or revenue streams. And so I don't know that they would necessarily move, but especially for companies that are looking for a particular type of infrastructure, say access to a port. Houston area might be great, but Louisiana might be great too, because they have the same access to the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, it's any number of things. I know the Tesla projects that I worked on, they were considering sites in Canada that had sort of the same benefits, sites in Asia, that sort of thing. But yeah, it really just depends on where that company is, where they were when they applied for the project versus where they are 10 years later. They might just be interested in moving for a reason that has nothing to do with kind of how successful they are.
And so back to Kendra's point, what's that piece of property has already been designated as an opportunity zone and jetty? No other company could go in there to leverage that for themselves.
For that particular project, it depends. I don't think, I can imagine a situation where, and actually this happened quite a bit with Chapter 313, where a company would move in and that first company was willing to invest in the infrastructure that maybe other companies weren't because they had a particular model that worked, and then they leave, but the infrastructure is still there. And so a new company might come in and take over, or take over a site and look to expand it. So that I can foresee a situation like that. Yeah, but yeah, a big concern with a lot of these investments is what happens when they go away, or there's a concern about kind of being sold a false bill of goods. The company says they're going to do these great things and then they leave. One of the things that I always advise governmental entities is just to know that once these zones are created, once you have kind of the proof of concept that a type of business can operate there, that inherently increases the value of that area. And so it's going to make it attractive to a lot of folks that may not have been attracted to it before those incentives were put in place. So like once you are put on the map, other folks start to take notice and they'll say, oh, now there's infrastructure where there wasn't any before. Now there's, you name it, and the sites slowly become more and more appealing.
So are you talking about certifying the property for XYZ industries? Are you talking about certifying properties, showing that the infrastructure is there?
Not necessarily certifying, but when you think about the bundle of benefits that a company might have, as the local government starts to provide those, it will not necessarily certify the property, but it it changes the appeal of the property. Not in an official way of like a certification or something like that. There might be something like a reinvestment zone designation, which changes, but not necessarily like a stamp of approval or certification.
So I would liken it more to something like you have a new industry come to your community that hasn't been there before. And think Samsung. So those are high-tech semiconductor jobs that weren't in that part of Central Texas before, certainly Austin. They weren't there. So now all of a sudden you have a workforce that's skilled. And so that's an asset that might draw other companies. So Samsung's not going to leave this capital investment that they're making here, but just as an example, an asset would be workforce. In some cases, maybe a business needs, a high flow natural gas, and they invest in that. For whatever reason, maybe markets change, demand changes, that company leaves, another company comes in because they need high flow natural gas, and that workforce that was no longer there. So those kinds of just strengths that come to a community because of skill sets and infrastructure assets, and maybe even a building that business might need.
And so when an investor does come in and they identify property that's, let's say it's in an opportunity zone, let's say it's not, but once the school district or the public entity knows that they're close to something, when do they reach out to you guys and enter into an agreement with y'all, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so it really depends. I mentioned the $6 billion project that just popped up, right? In that case, first question might be, who do we call at that point? It might be a financial advisor, it might be your attorney, which is what ended up happening there. It really depends on where you are in the process. You could certainly kind of proactively have an attorney like me or like Sarah or like other folks at our firm to kind of bounce these ideas off of and help create tax abatement, reinvestment zones, that sort of thing. Or it might be after you've been contacted by the company. But it really just depends. It depends on where you are and kind of where you are in terms of having been engaged by the company or the governor's office, which is they're becoming increasingly involved in economic development, hands-on this way. So it really just depends. Yeah. Some of us, for the school district clients, a lot of them they're already our clients, and so they'll call and we'll chat about it. But yeah, it really just depends. Yeah.
Okay.
Depends on.
Now, is there a certain fee that the school district gets paid or the governmental entity gets paid while they're setting things up, or how does all that work? About a fee?
Yeah. So for the JETI program, yes. So the JETI program, and this is a carryover from the Chapter 313 program, where the concept is school districts for the most part aren't going out and knocking on. I mentioned Exxon, so I'll keep saying Exxon, but knocking on Exxon's door and saying, hey, we'd really love a Chapter 313 agreement. It's usually the other way around. Right? The companies are planning, and so they'll reach out to the governmental entity. The concept in Chapter 313, which carried over to the JETI program, is school districts aren't asking for these, but they come with real expenses, right? You have a finance consultant, you have an attorney drafting documents, and so to the extent that there are those fees that are being accumulated by the school district, which they didn't seek out, the company pays the school district a set fee that covers that. So that's carried over to the JETI program.
Okay. That's what y'all would help the school district kind of enter into that agreement and set the fee, what it would be. I mean, do y'all help with that kind of stuff?
Yes. Well, the fee for JETI applications, that's set by the comptroller.
Okay.
And so that is it's part of the application that is submitted to the comptroller. That's another quirk of the JETI program. The Chapter 313 applications were submitted to the school district, which kind of at that point became the quarterback of the application. JETI applications go straight to the comptroller's office, oftentimes with no notice to the governmental entities involved, which is why you get into a situation where you get a notice from the governor, hey, this has been approved, we need you to act in 30 days, which is by statute, and it's just, it's bizarre. It just doesn't, it doesn't align with the cadence, the normal cadence of the government entity, but that's what we're working with. So that might be the time that folks reach out and say, hey, we need someone. But yeah, so that is set by the comptroller's office. What we do primarily will be helping governmental entities, cities, counties, et cetera, create an abatement agreement, creating a reinvestment zone, just general kind of negotiations around deal points, serve as that entity's representative. And for school districts, primarily we're facilitating the application at the comptroller and governor's office.
Okay.
And then we negotiate the agreement from that point forward.
Okay.
And of course, keep everyone up to date and making sure it's in plain English, because as an attorney, I can say we're not the best at writing plain English. As a group, I pride myself on being able to communicate clearly, but so that's the role that we take.
Okay. Does anybody have any more questions? We appreciate your time.
All right.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Here you go. Legal disclaimer, of course. But yes, thank you all so much, and I'll leave some business cards if you all have any questions, but however I can help you, all let me know. Thank you.
Thank you again. We appreciate your time. All right, next discussion regarding rural internship program on page 16.
All right, as many of you are aware, we used to fund the rural internship program. It started at, $500 per intern. Board last time increased that amount to, I think, $1,000 per intern, and we were going to pay for up to 4 interns that the board could select from applications received. While we were doing that program, we received notification from EDA that that was no longer a eligible expense. So we kind of, tossed the ball back and forth on how best to continue moving this program forward. And then we got into some conversations with workforce. I think we need to probably fire those conversations back up again. But, there was a change of staffing over there, and everything kind of just got put on hold. So staff are looking at ways to continue moving this project forward. The problem is we don't have funding, so we have to identify a funding source and eligibility, and/or identify another methodology of providing the same type of benefit, which is what we were doing with workforce, possibly piggybacking on one of their technology.
PEA grant.
Yeah, through one of their programs. I think you were in some of those meetings that we had. And I'm happy to have you jump in if you have anything additional.
Yeah, so we were talking with Charlie before he left workforce, and we were discussing ways that we could get kids into like a pathway, like an education pathway. I think what were the 2 different pathways that he was really going to focus on? Science, technology, and education, maybe? I can't remember the 2 different pathways that they were really working on. And I want to say it was science, technology, and education were going to be the 2 that we were really going to focus on, like some kind of STEM and then education. Hey, nice to get you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you. And so basically we were going to identify students. We were basically, Central Texas Workforce was going to take the bull by the horns and do a lot of the legwork, but we were just going to pipeline that in, pipeline students into that program that already kind of existed, that was getting built out, so to speak, where kids could get real world job-like experience working somewhere like a school district or a hospital or a clinic or something like that, where the kids were going to go get that experience. And I don't know if it wasn't going to cost us anything. I don't think it was going to be grant funded through maybe Central Texas Workforce Solutions, maybe.
So for the education one, his plan and that we still have in our plan would be that kids would get experience in early childhood education centers.
Okay.
So they're quality childcare centers where they learn how to educate children at a young age. So we thought that would be a good match. We still have the funding to do that. for that group, it would be set up where we connected them with specific childcare centers for a specific amount of time. I don't know what that looks like because I haven't read the grant. But we still have that money. We can still do that for kids that were wanting to know what, like education in general. They could learn some early childhood education on site. And that would be a great internship. For the STEM group, he did not write that into the grant, but right now what we would do is we have work experience programs that pay $12 an hour, I think, while they work for different employers in fields of interest. So that could be at a school district or a city or kind of really anywhere that's willing to help a kid learn basically how to show up on time and dress right and say the right things, and teamwork and problem solving and those types of skills. And if they were particularly skilled, then we would match them with, if it were a CTE student who had a particular background, we would try to match them to an employer who's interested in that.
And then two, what I heard was that we could identify the early childhood education program. It could be a Head Start in, one of our counties that we could identify and kind of loop them in through Central Texas Workforce Solutions. So even if it was like Mills County or St. Sata County or something like that, if they had the early childhood, childhood education center, then we could loop that into the system somehow.
Yeah, I think that he initially put like 10 kids into the program just to see if how well it worked. But again, and the same thing works for the work experience in rural areas. It's a little harder to get that match to an employer, but it is certainly something that we're funded today to do. I don't know what the new legislation will do with that, but this year I can do it.
And then how many students would be eligible through the program? Is there a cap?
So for the early childhood education, he either wrote in 10 or 12. We're pretty flexible about that. If there were someone, let's say that an at-risk student was interested in early, and by at-risk I mean like low income. If they were interested in getting a work experience in a child care center, we could pay their wages while they worked at a child care center for up to 300 hours, so like over a summer. So lots of opportunity there.
Could it also be, so the rural internship program has traditionally been a summer program. Am I thinking correctly in that some of the discussion that we had on this back in January was that maybe it could also be during the school year for some of the students?
Yeah, I think we had a few different discussions going on, on how we partner with Workforce and possibly doing this, but it looked like Workforce has their thing and they have their channels, and there's really no role for the DDCT to play in that. Plus, historically, these programs have been designed and geared to help the local governments and those entities, not, daycare center or restaurant or, somewhere where workforce type or staff kind of help place individuals. So I think there was some, how best do we fit, what kind of programs does Workforce have that allow us to keep with
The
intent of what the program originally was? And if at the end of the day, it's nothing more than us working with and coordinating with Workforce to get people into that workforce pipeline for their Pathways program, and us to continue to try to find ways to fund this, then we're good with that as well, as long as we're helping where we can. But I think that was
seeing the misalignment that you're seeing.
Well, I think that originally the rural internship program was placing students in chambers of commerce,
City
economic
Council, City
development
Hall.
organizations. Okay, so it was kind of intended to help with economic development. So that's where the intent is a little bit different. If the focus was just on developing youth experiences, job experiences, that would be different, but this was kind of an idea to help cities and economic development
Good,
organizations.
let's start, because I do think that early childhood development and education, if we get some of these students from some of these other areas, to get them that experience and then get their foot in the door in that pipeline, then they're more likely to come back and work at that child care center or come back and work at that school district and maybe keep that pipeline going in different areas. We think it's smart to focus on that as one of our strategies within this. I like the idea of working with what y'all already have as the option A, but continuing to maybe look at funding sources in the future, so where we can maybe augment the program or add to the program.
Yeah, and I'm good with that. Like I said, I didn't want to, if the board doesn't want to move away from what the intent of the program was, which was specific, I think we did that because it was EDA funding. And, it was specifically geared toward EDA type activities in that area. But I like the idea of working with workforce to locate students that may qualify for this Pathways program, or early child care program, and help get them where they need to be, in addition to possibly finding alternative funding solutions for the 3 or 4 individuals through the summertime that would utilize this specific program.
Maybe Central Texas Workforce could be like a strand of the program. Like in the future, like right now, it's kind of what we have because there's no funding, but as funding becomes available, maybe we add a strand to it, and then maybe another strand later on, but the Central Texas Workforce would just be a way that we can have a strand through the program somehow to maybe build out opportunities for the program, for the rural internship program.
And I can tell you for the thing of the intent of this, we're not funded for that, for sure. But parallel, not even.
But you guys stick to the grant funds and what they're used for, and they're specific, the way they're written, so. I guess,
And I don't think there's nothing that prohibits us from working with workforce to assist with this activity, getting folks wherever we may be able to be suited to assist. I mean, workforce has a robust staff and they're very good at what they do. So there may not be a role for us there, but if there is, and they reach out, we're happy to assist wherever we can.
We're very interested in the early childhood education internship. Evidently, that's not this, but it's parallel to this, and there's ways we can work together. That is one that we do want to promote because we need to increase the education pipeline.
I 100% agree with that. So what would be like a future action step that we can talk about, with maybe solidifying that with?
I don't really know at this point.
Maybe the application process could become, we just support their application process. Maybe make a point of contact, but maybe make a.
You want workforce just to take the lead on that and start working with you specifically, Brian, on getting that internship in place.
Yeah, I think it's probably most appropriate coming from workforce.
Like that.
Yeah, and it'll be Jared. Jared will contact you.
Good deal. Any more discussion? Okay. All right.
Excuse me, I have a question for workforce. It may not pertain to this, but Ms. Angel, the Wrenches to Wheels program that Charlie used to do, did that go away?
No, we're doing 4 over the summer. We've already done one in Rockdale, one in Holland, Next one is at Fort Hood, and then we have one in Lampasas still to do. So they're going on right now.
They're gonna continue.
It's based on, because this is an activity we're funded to do. It's based on getting donations. Right now, we have donations from HEB and Atlas Energy. So if the funding continues, it's a program we really love doing.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to continue it.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7, discussion item regarding the 22-26 Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, CEDS implementation on page 18.
So, with the staff transition, I'll be 100% honest. I haven't done a whole lot of activity. I haven't taken on a lot of work to move forward the CEDS implementation strategy. I just haven't had the capacity to do that. Hopefully when our new planner gets here in August, he'll hit the ground with his running. But that being said, I did provide the same information that was provided in April. Sam and of course Sam, there was Dominique, and they were very active in this. What my main focus is right now is making sure we don't majorly drop the ball on something like reports for some of these communities where we're administering the grants for them, things like that, gaining that type of access. I don't know that really feeds into CEDS implementation, but that's kind of what staff are doing right now with our limited capacity for.
Yes, sir.
I think that this could, the guidelines or the objective could be expanded to include local city governments to provide this similar information to them with regard to distribution through their websites, make it more available to citizens, because most of the local communities have a reasonably good website. And so this could be published as an appendix. And possibly a review of the better planning and development guidelines of some of the medium-sized cities. Salado would be a good one. When I was on the city council at Bartlett, I used a lot of the Salado city ordinances as guidelines for new ordinances for Bartlett. And, as we grow, we should hopefully try to grow in an ecologically sound manner, that we have decent drainage and we don't induce more storm-related impacts to local communities because we didn't plan accordingly and didn't have our master plan updated for 20 years, like in my community it hasn't been. So I think that this is very important information, but it should be kind of a top-down approach through the cities, through the citizens, to their local government, to the citizens, through their local government, and more directly to the citizens as it's developed here.
Thank you, Dean. Number 2, I think a little bit more will happen in August when.
Yeah, I don't really know everything that'll happen. I mean, he's going to come in and hopefully, like I said, he hits the ground running, and he'll be able to pick up with some of this. And that's really the reason for the need for the forum today, is to be able to discuss this and kind of items that Dean just spoke to, how we can improve that, as well as, things we need meeting and structurally wise. Of course, when he gets here, he'll start with the next revision of the CEDS update. The 5-year plan is it's about time to fire that back.
Anybody have any discussion on this?
I have discussion, I have a question, and this is me being very new to this. So we have a plan, we have objectives, and we have, for example, the focus of this objective. Who actually does this?
Usually it's on staff planner that does this. And we still have staff that are sending out newsletters. They're, doing typical staff type duties. But going in and finding actionable items usually is the actual economic development planner that's on staff, which that position is vacant.
But a lot of it's just helping cities and municipalities and government entities
Yeah.
with this disaster preparedness, communication efforts and things like that. Really just get information to them.
The sharing of
and
information,
help.
and then we do a lot of the grant applications and the grant administration for these projects they get. And I don't want to say consulting, advising maybe on grant eligibility and things like that. Writing the grants for economic development and facilitating those conversations.
Just building relationships with the different cities and entities.
Right.
And this is just kind of spells out what that relationship looks like with a government entity and what it should be. And so just getting input, and then whoever comes in August, and them coming in and, looking at maybe some of the input that we've given or whoever's given, and maybe looking at a way to revamp it or improve it, or, and then eventually re-up it because it's a five-year plan.
And a lot of these strategies were developed so that even the board members themselves, as they submit in kind, they can report to these activities of, I reached out to these people and I sent out these notices. And so the in kind that's required, like for our EA grants and things like that, they can report on these activities as part of their hours.
Any more discussion, anything, more input or discussion on the topic? Okay, moving on to number 8, discussion item regarding updates to the regional broadband initiatives on page 20.
There are no updates. That is 100% a carryover from last time. There was some talk at the state level about changing some of those from the broadband development office. I think the biggest thing to stay in the know with broadband efforts is there is a weekly, it might have changed to monthly by now. There is a weekly call to local governments. I thought I had it included.
This says the first Thursday of each month at 10 a.m.
Yeah, it used to be weekly and now they've changed it, but the local roundtable is very informative, or can be.
And I think 2 more money got put into that in this last legislative session. More money got put into the broadband initiatives. So that's an initiative that they put more money into, I believe. It's going to continue to grow, and it's going to continue to be funded. All right, any more discussion on that?
I'll just say, if you didn't click on the links in this.
I did not.
The Texas Digital Opportunity Plan is for communities, and it says how to work with your internet service providers as they come and want to do upgrades. It's really a nice document, and it tells a great resource. And to Kendra's point, I'm glad to see you again, Kendra. It's one of those things that could be shared with your community for hours, to record our in-kind hours. So good resources if you have time to click through some of these things.
Thank you, Ginger. All right, any more discussion on broadband initiative? Then we're moving on to legislative updates. Number 9, discussion item, legislative updates impacting economic development on page 22.
All right, so as everybody's aware, one big beautiful bill act signed into law July 4th. There are no specific provisions for or against EDA in that bill. There are a lot of specific provisions, but none for EDA. That being said, the CR, of course, was approved last year for EDA specifically, and in speaking with them on the phone just yesterday, was notified that they still haven't received an actual allocation from the federal government at this point to continue some of their programs. They do have disaster funding available, people to apply, but their regular public works type funding streams are still all on hold. The other thing to keep in mind is there has been talk on the Hill about additional reconciliation bills coming down the pipe. So we will be monitoring those as well when they start coming out. So we're monitoring those. I have not had a chance to go through any of the Texas legislation since the close of session. And I know that they just announced yesterday that they're firing up another session. A majority of that, my understanding, is on public safety type stuff. I'm not sure there were a lot of economic development provisions in the special session either.
So at some point, when staff has an opportunity, I have a question on the House Bill 563. And specifically, it has language, it speaks to a qualified municipality means a municipality with a population of 10,000 or less that experienced a decrease in total revenue of at least 15% during the preceding municipal fiscal year as a result of a reduction or termination of contracts with private entities. What private, I mean, what kind of contracts is this talking about? So that's my question, is that particular area, if at some point, it's not a rush, but this is interesting to me because it could be, but you know what?
Can you read that last sentence?
15%.
Can you read that last sentence again?
Well, it's a 15%, at least a 15% reduction during the preceding municipal fiscal year, resulting in termination, as a result of termination of contracts with private sector entities. So I don't know, is that a telecommunications contract? Is it a private industry? Is it synergy?
I'll look and see what I can find out about this, what the intent was.
Yeah, I mean,
Good question.
next quarterly meeting, if that's possible, I'm
That's a
just
good one.
interested, what does that mean? Thank you.
That was all I had for update.
In addition to the reconciliation bills, there's also they're doing a rescissions bill. They're taking back stuff that was already allocated but not spent. That's one that we're watching very closely.
What is that USDA grant program for technical assistance for rural water systems? Do y'all know anything about that one?
That was a carryover from the previous meeting, so I'm familiar with it.
Maybe just a little bit more information on some of the stuff on the next
We can work
on the next agenda. Okay.
We can go into better detail with those.
Okay, move.
Before we move on, I just have a question, since you said water out loud. Water. So we got approved, Central Texas got approved for their new water district thing. How does that impact economic development? It seems like it should.
I haven't talked a lot with Judge Blackburn about the alliance and where the cross section of those two things is or isn't. I mean, of course, water is a necessary resource for economic development. But since they're brand new, I think they just had their first meeting last week. They're still trying to figure things out too, but I think we can have those conversations, see where that cross section is, and how we work together for economic development.
More discussion? Item number 9. Now we'll move to item number 10, discussion item regarding membership 24 through 26.
All right, some of you have been around a while. Some of you have been around for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Over the past few years, there's been a decline in active membership in the DDCT. I mean, when I started about 8 years ago, you know, there were more directors on the board than there are now, but it's just, it seems to ebb and flow. I think the hardest thing is getting members who have the ability or capacity even maybe to be engaged and to attend the meetings, even though they're quarterly. And I don't even have a better way to say it, that finds relevance in the DDCT. I think so. So right now, this conversation really is based on membership. How do we increase our membership numbers? You know, we have a few counties that we haven't had a member the whole time I've been here. I do intend to reach out to them all and then speak with them at the CTCOG executive committee next week. Our bylaws also allow a provision for two CTCOG executive, two of the CTCOG executive committee members to serve on the DDCT board, but to my knowledge, I don't know that we've ever had those two positions filled. So working to get those kind of to get our membership numbers up so that we can have a really robust conversations on what the DDCT needs to be doing and how we provide value. You know, we can sit around as a group of 5 or 6, but I think the more people we have that are actively engaged, the better the conversation can be on how this board can benefit our 7-county region as a whole. So I really just wanted to bring it up because as you may or may not be aware, the last month we didn't have a quorum in person, so we couldn't have a meeting. We do allow in the bylaws, and that's for the next item, of course, for virtual, but the way the bylaws are written, the membership and the quorum has to be in person. So membership is a really big topic. If you have people that are interested that you think would serve this board well, it would benefit the board for them to be on it, please share that information with us. We're happy to reach out and make that connection. And then, you know, for those, we have it. For some reason, there are a ton of individual slots. I wasn't around when the DDCT was created. Like I said, I've only been around a little bit of time, but we have a ton of individual slots. And to get those filled, really all a person needs is a letter of support from an elected official. So in my mind, that should be an easy ask, but I don't know. I mean, with that, I'll open it up to any conversations anybody may have. I know Dean and Ginger, you guys have been around a while, so I'm happy to hear any feedback you may have on how we possibly boost our membership, how we change it, any of those things.
Well, I agree that in person is important for the substantial conversations about what the development district can do to positively impact the 7 counties. However, it's also a drive for many of our counties. It's a long distance. And so I wonder why in today's environment, we can't allow quorum virtually. As long as somebody is on camera.
So we can, technically we can, but we would, we have to change the bylaws. Right?
Well, I think that would hopefully make a difference. Because, you know, when you look at our reaching, it's not that bad for me to come here from Karen.
You have Scott from San Saba. That's
yes. Yeah, that becomes very difficult to spend your really whole day. For the people who might find value in this organization are also very busy and have lots of operations. So to me, the simplest thing to do is make an amendment to the
And I anticipated these 2 items kind of run together because they're so intertwined. And that is one of the recommendations that I'll be making. The bylaws amendment process has to go through a couple different things, so we couldn't do it this time. Of course, we couldn't bring amendments forward. But prior to the next meeting, there'll be some additional bylaws revisions. Membership, though, I wanted to kind of see, as we talk membership, is what we have defined in the bylaws for membership what we need, or do we need, we have one representative for each of the 7 counties. Of course, we have few vacancies in those positions. Then we have the rest are just all individuals. Are there other organizations or something we can put in there and not label them as individual? So that they don't have to get approved by the DDC. All these individuals, when they come through, they're required to get approved by the DDCT according to the bylaws, and then the CTCOG executive committee has to ratify that decision prior to them being officially members. Is there a way we modify that process? If you're appointed by Bell County or you're one of our standing members like Workforce, those requirements don't fit. You show up, you're part of the board as the appointment process for where you are. But for all these individual members that we have to get the letter, and we have to get the board to take action, and then we have to get the CTCOG to ratify that. If that were the case for Linda and Amanda, they would be here. We wouldn't really have a quorum because of the way that process works for individuals. Now, they're with the county and Workforce, so that doesn't apply. But I think we really need to think how that works. And if there's a better way of, we open it up to 2 individuals that are community members, but then maybe have an appointment process from local jurisdictions and governing bodies like we do most of our boards. But,
That then doesn't have to be ratified by the executive committee.
correct. And the DDCT doesn't have to take action to approve members that need to be on the board.
So, again, don't know answers, I mean, no questions. Why isn't, like, Colleen has an economic development, probably corporation, they have a rep. I know for sure that Temple does, because that's almost why I wasn't here. They wanted me at a different meeting to be on their board. And so when I think about an economic development district, it seems like people who are doing economic development ought to be on the board. Talking about what can we do together and even what's happening in their areas. Because, well, from a Workforce perspective, that tends to overlap. If a big business comes to Boreal County, then Bell County cares. Because that Workforce is gonna overlap in secondary and tertiary businesses and all that. So is there some reason that this isn't designed around people who doing economic development would be on this board?
If you look, and historically I wasn't here. I just don't know. I know the DDCT was created as a nonprofit. It has articles of incorporation since that time. The bylaws have evolved. Board started out huge, I'm saying almost 40 people. That's kind of dwindled down. But if you look at these individuals that are on the list, they all represent the MDD, the EDCs. And so that was my question. Do we need to relabel them as not individual, but a representative from Rockdale, a representative from, and we don't want a board that's 450 people, but 32 cities and 7 counties. We don't need a 40 member. In my opinion, if you think we do, we do. But how do we identify? I mean, do we, in our membership, do we come up with some kind of methodology to say, hey, each of the 7 counties will get a representative that they can appoint, and then based on population, you get another economic appointment and 2 general citizens. Or what does that look like instead of just having all these individuals? But, you know, like Gender is listed as an individual. She's with the Cameron Industrial Foundation, but I'm pretty sure you actually represent Milam County, so you should be in another slot. So it just gets, I don't really know.
Well, we've got 2 from Milam County, Jim Gibson, who's the development
For
person
Rockdale.
for Rockdale,
Right.
and myself for Cameron. So,
What would happen if you went to the city level? Not every city in the world, but like Bell County with a population of this, gets this many city level slots.
And that's kind of what I was thinking. We have other bylaws that are population based. You know, if you have over such population, you get so many members on the board. It could expand it.
and the one thing, historically, the development district has really been an asset to the smaller communities. Because when you think of our large cities in Bell County, for example, they have lots of resources. So when we talk about disaster preparedness or how to manage ordinances, they have those resources.
Right.
So when I hear population, like, kind of need to be the smaller population gets, you know, more on a county representation. I don't know how that population really serves the needs of the smaller counties that are underserved. It's been my perception that the development district has tried to serve. Small ones.
I first learned about this organization, it was 2013-14 timeframe when I was a city councilman and started attending the CTCOG functions that were here, the ones that related to new membership in city government. And then I became a member of the of the Municipal Development District, and that's when I became a member here. I think, you know, that's a good place. I don't know how much activity CTCOG has with new members anymore, but that's a good place to put this information out and try to solicit new members into DDCT. I think it's good that you have members from local city councils, especially the smaller cities and local EDCs and development districts. I think we should solicit memberships from those areas as much as possible.
Would it almost be appropriate to do a member representing each county and then each EDC, because there aren't as many EDCs as there are cities. They're just not.
That's true. That's true. And then that becomes doesn't have to be approved.
Right.
It's just an automatic representation like workforce or accounting. I think that would make a lot of sense.
And then we can still leave it open for, like I said, two to 4, 5, doesn't matter to me. I mean, but have some vacancies in there for individual representatives or those that aren't specifically listed in the bylaws so that they can be.
I think the goal would be to have somebody from the city, from every, you know, somebody represented from each city, hopefully, because, and maybe even school districts too, not necessarily superintendents, but, you know, you've got to have a good partnership with your schools. You got to have, cities got to have those good partnerships with those schools. You gotta have a good partnership with your county. There's a lot of, so I think, you know, if we could get somebody representing, you know, each city maybe, I don't know if that's even possible.
Well, see, yeah, and that's where I think we get into, that's a large board because we have 32 cities, we have 7 counties, that's already 40 members. And then you take it into account workforce and the EDCs, the chambers and those things. And
We went with EDC, so that would focus on kind of what this board is supposed to do, and bringing all the common voices, kind of pull that together. And it might make it more relevant for people who do economic development to have a network of folks they can talk to.
You know, and if we're doing our jobs, we're engaged with our cities, we're engaged with workforce, we're engaged with our school districts. So,
Brian, do we have to have that provision in there about getting those memberships, the individuals ratified, or can we remove that?
that I don't know, I'd have to give an opinion on that.
And then the other thought is just, you know, as large as we build the board, it then affects quorum and the ability to meet quorum.
but if we can amend the bylaws to allow for virtual participation.
Yes, right.
Then that will, I
And we can't do that.
truly believe that will help, because I think of Jim Gibson in Rockdale, and you know, if you're busy and you've got a full calendar for the day, he's gonna spend an hour and a half one way getting here. And so,
What if the goal was to have like just a sprinkling of cities and at least a few cities, you know, representing the counties, you know, or maybe one city per county? Or at least have a minimum requirement of, you know, one, you know, where we talk about it, and because not everybody's gonna wanna serve on the economic development board, you know, not everybody can or has the time. What if we identified at least, what if it was a goal to have one city per county, you know, one school per county possibly? You know, then you're looking at 14 members there versus 40. So we just invite them to see what.
Leave a few individual seats.
I did solicit a member to expand the DDCT, and that's Superintendent Clevenger. And so that was, you know, because years of friendship and knowing him and discussions with the management here. So we can all do that. We can go to our local governing body and local school boards. I'm glad that we have a school board member, an executive of the school board, because I think that's an important asset. And I know it works great with workforce, or should work with workforce. So we can all solicit membership, and that way we have you know, the opportunity to consider who we think would be the most qualified. Maybe we could put it on Facebook too.
You'll be the Facebook coordinator. No, but I just think that everybody has a unique voice. Everybody's got unique challenges. There are some similarities that overlap across the board, whether you're in Cameron or whether you're in Rockdale or Bartlett or wherever. But there are some uniquenesses, like you said, some uniquenesses to each city or county. And so I'm open for any ideas to creating spots or amending spots or whatever ideas that y'all may have.
And my thought is, you know, this is something kind of to get some feedback, see what everybody thought, or to see if I've lost my mind, we're seeing things clearly. But, you know, my recommendation is we'll get the new staff person on board, and at the next board meeting, we will bring forward revised bylaws, which will include two or three different scenarios for membership, so that board can say, hey, we like it the way it is, keep moving forward. Or, yeah, we like scenario 1 or scenario 2, let's go with that, move forward that way.
Any more discussion? I like the 2 or 3 different scenarios.
Yeah.
I like that idea. Okay. So we covered 11 as well.
Well, we only covered part of 11.
Just moving to 11, discussion item regarding bylaws 28 to 36.
And of course, we covered kind of like the membership part. The biggest thing I wanted to focus on, and I know these were just, the amendment was approved in January from the last revision, and there are some things I think we just missed, or we thought would fix themselves, but they didn't. One of those being the meetings. At the next meeting, I intend to have the new bylaws or bylaws amendment in whatever time frame the bylaws lay out. I think it's 10 days prior to the meeting for everybody to review and provide feedback. But meetings is the biggest thing. Texas Open Meetings Act allows this board, because they serve more than 3 counties, to meet virtually, provided that the chair of the meeting is in person at one location open to the public, which would be this facility here. If the board would like, I can make that revision and put that recommendation in front of the board next time as well. There is value, there's definitely value in having meetings in person. But if you can't make a quorum, you can't have a meeting anyways, and you can't take action. And it also, I don't see it as members of the board are just going to say, well, it's just another virtual meeting now, and they just fall off the radar. I think people are going to be engaged. They're going to appreciate the opportunity to be part of the meeting, but do it virtually. Like we referenced for the folks coming from Hamilton Mills, San Saba, Southern Milam County. It's quite a trek. So just being cognizant of their time and the large land area that we cover as a region, I think it would benefit to make that revision to allow us to meet in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act.
Which would remove the minimum requirement of 50%
Well,
present.
So the minimum requirement would stay the same, 50% plus 1. That allows for you to definitely have a majority of the board. But the only person that would have to be in person is whoever's chairing.
I like it. I think it's important to this board to be able to have that.
To be what?
To have the flexibility for
Yeah.
a quorum to be made virtual.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing you.
Like the flexibility of being virtual. There's so many things some of us have an hour and a half to 2 hour drive time, and that takes half your day, and it's not like some of us are 30 minutes away. It takes an hour of your day to get here and back. So I like the ability to be flexible. So you can attend 2 meetings if you need to.
And that being said, if there are any other possible revisions other than the membership or that Open Meetings Act meetings, if you see anything or have any other recommended changes, please send those over. Be happy to have those conversations or include them in the amended bylaws that we'll send out prior to the next meeting for discussion.
That's the biggest hurdle, I think, is just being able to conduct business. That's one of the biggest ones for them. I can think of.
I want to say, I think, a couple of years back, we even lowered the quorum, but then we're told that we had to raise the quorum back up.
And I think if you're a chair or a vice chair, you're only allowed to serve a two one-year terms. And then you can't ever serve as a chair or vice chair again. Is that how that works? I think that's how that works. I think that's how it works. You can't serve.
You can't succeed yourself more than twice in the position, but I don't know, I think we need to clarify some of that too. I mean,
If you, let's say it's different when you get removed from that seat, but if you enjoy it and everybody's happy with what you're doing, I see a 2-year limitation being a possible problem.
well, and we do a lot of 2-year limitations on the boards, but that's not saying that after, 1 or 2 cycles, people don't
Go
have to
back.
cycle back up to
Yeah.
the top.
Okay,
It's to keep people from, being the chair for 20,
I got you.
20, 30 years.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So you can't cycle back to it.
Yeah.
I just took it as you can't ever do it again.
Well, and I think our bylaws don't specifically state that. So we need to be very, very careful of, mindful that people that serve may want to serve in those positions. There may be value to having them serve on. But we can incorporate those revisions prior to the next meeting.
Any other discussion? All right, moving on to CTCOG staffing for DDCT. All right, 38.
My staff update is nowhere as intense as previous staff updates. Like I mentioned earlier, we're continuing to just try to keep the ball moving forward with the projects that we're working on. I'm making sure that we're doing our reporting, our closing out, or any of those types of things for communities who are administering their grants. The biggest update is the new economic development planner is scheduled to start August 4th. Hopefully, we'll be able to continue moving things forward. For that time.
Do we have any board of director comments at this time? The business, next meeting Thursday, October the 3rd at 9:30.
Say the date again?
It's Friday, October the 3rd, it looks like.
Friday.
Thursday.
Y'all see any concerns with that
Thursday
date?
or Friday?
Mr. Ryan, I think that should have been the second,
Probably.
October the second.
Maybe it's the second then.
Do we want to make it that second?
Usually it's on a Thursday, that's all that I want to say. I don't know, whatever y'all.
Thursday, October the 2nd? I'm okay with Thursday. I like that. Thursdays are great. Okay, any other business? Okay, I guess we'll move on to adjourn. At this time, it is 11:25. Thank you all very much. Thank you for your time.